proof is in the name, binging with Babish. The most common question I've gotten since starting the show has consistently been, who the hell is Babish? The answer is an ancillary character from 8 total episodes of the seminal NBC classic The West Wing, portrayed by Oliver Platt. Any West Wing fans in the audience? We are few, we are strong. I named my Reddit handle after his character, Oliver Babish, as a joke. I named my cooking show after my Reddit handle as a joke. Now that joke is my entire brand and professional identity and what most people think my actual name is. Life is funny sometimes. As far back as I can remember, my focus and energy were always torn between food and film. My mother taught me to cook before I started to properly form memories, and I was making what can only charitably be called short films the same day my dad brought home our first mini DV camera. I thought I was hot shit, both at making shaky, camera-edited class projects and whipping up undercooked chicken breasts stuffed with artichoke hearts and cream cheese. When the day finally came to choose one over the other, aka deciding where to go to college, I chose film, the way more secure career path. Even as I stayed up late writing crappy scripts about hitmen and drug deals gone bad, I tried to hone my ability as a cook. I was lucky enough to have a roommate equally deluded about his culinary skills, and we sullied our dorm's communal kitchen with experiments ranging from acidic, undercooked tomato sauces to rubbery, salty homemade jerky. It was even worse when I cooked for family or significant others, showcasing the shortcoming of many kitchen newcomers, attempting to cook well above my pay grade. Burnt on the outside, raw on the inside, homemade English muffins with scrambled hollandaise sauce. That was my girlfriend at the time, that was her birthday breakfast. Aww. The worst thing I've ever done. Roasts that were somehow both falling apart and thirst-provokingly dry. I probably use the word reduction more often in casual conversation than I use contractions. It wasn't until after a fateful breakfast in 2009 that this guy was at that I started taking things seriously. I had 4 of my best friends in town, the first time we've been under the same roof since high school, and I was determined to make them the hangover brunch of their dreams after a night of debauchery. My friends stumbled bleary-eyed out of bed to the sound of me clattering away in the kitchen, hoping that they might get the greasy spoon experience that their bodies so dearly needed. Instead, they were met with a plate of sous vide quail eggs, asparagus, and truffle oil crostini, a few of which they managed to choke down before sheepishly asking if there was a diner nearby. Over chilaquiles and beers, red-faced with embarrassment, I realized that I had always tried to be inventive with a craft that I didn't fully yet understand. I was secretly hoping that I harbored some kind of Mozart-like prodigious knowledge, but in reality I was waving a stick around and wondering why the orchestra sounded so bad. I resolved to get a hold of the basics. That's a show I do. I resolved to get a hold of the basics so I can make food that impresses with its flavor rather than its concept. The kind of cooking that people actually like. For some reason, it took nearly 15 years for me to put food and film together, and it happened quite by accident. I'd given up my Hollywood megastar dreams and gotten a day job in post-production, and focused on something I knew I was good at, storytelling. I took every documentary gig I could get my hands on, toiling until twilight after work, often with something bubbling away in the background at the stovetop. One of the documentaries I edited got into the Tribeca Film Festival, but overall, my contributions to the field went unnoticed. Moreover, I was slipping into a deep depression, resigning myself to the belief that I didn't have anything unique to share with the world. I stopped applying myself at work, seeking out new projects, being an attentive and present partner, and most alarmingly, stopped cooking. This eventually culminated in spending 2 weeks in bed feigning food poisoning because I couldn't bear to get up and face the looming reality that, despite my tireless efforts, my voice would never be heard. This was the rock bottom I had so often heard about, the tipping point at which no one can help you but yourself. So began the process I like to think of as the ever-widening of my then perilously small comfort zone. The first step was to see a therapist, something I urge anyone currently battling depression to seek out immediately. Next was to find a more fulfilling creative outlet, and as I picked up the Whisk Once movie, see what I said about not being able to read? I told you.
It's okay, you're reading in front of a crowd.
Thank you. Next was to find a more fulfilling creative outlet, and as I picked up the whisk once more, I decided that might end up being food photography. So the following step was investing in myself in the form of a $5,000 loan to amp up my abilities as a freelancer, a Sony a7S, a smattering of cheap lenses, a light, and a microphone. I decided to test out my new toys in my oddly perfectly lit kitchen, whipping up a smoothie out of vegetables in the fridge. I hit stop on the camera, ripped out the memory card, and was editing within a minute. It wasn't until after I'd put together a rough facsimile of a cooking show, sassily scored to cream on chrome, by rat-a-tat, this would end up being the precursor to binging with Babish, that I realized that I was having fun. I hadn't had fun in any capacity in years. The most difficult part was yet to come. I had to burn everything to the ground, which is just a metaphor, not an arsonist, relax. With the expanding of my comfort zone came maybe the most challenging step yet, which was a step inward. I realized I was perpetually unhappy, and as is often the case with those in denial, I hadn't the foggiest idea why. I was making progress in therapy, but I needed to undergo catastrophic change. What I did next, you should know, is not advisable. Please do not try this at home, especially any minors in the audience. Earmuffs. I had read about psychedelics being used in clinical trials to treat PTSD and severe depression, and it got me curious about the twisted, desiccated little fungi I had trepidatiously purchased and kept in my desk at work. I didn't want my wife to find that stuff. Then, one night before therapy, I decided to choke down 2 of the unpalatable little buggers just to see what would happen. I arrived early, shot the shit with my therapist to show him that I was cognizant and aware, and said, "So listen, Doc, you should know, I'm tripping face on mushrooms right now. You know what to do." He laughed, asked if I needed water, and proceeded to ask me questions that rocked my very foundation. In a 45-minute chit-chat, I came to the unshakable conclusion that I was in a broken marriage, something I was unable to accomplish in the 13 years that had spanned prior to that evening. I spent the next few days on the couch, unable to eat, crushed under the weight of my discovery. I told my wife how I felt that week, and a month later, we had moved out of Queens and gone our separate ways. Now you might be asking yourself, I was certain I bought a cookbook. So why am I being subjected to a life story? Well, to me, the show is much more than a cooking show. It's been the means to express myself creatively and personally for nearly 3 years at the time of this writing. It's how I pulled myself out of the depths of depression and how I've connected with new friends and reconnected with old. It's been my anchor as I continue the Sisyphean endeavor of expanding my comfort zone. It's reminded me that I've got a story to tell, and sharing that story with all of you has been the defining experience of my life. I hope that the show, this book, or the recipes within encourage you to try telling a story of your own, be it to the din of the world or in the